Hello, welcome back to the Key to Success podcast. I'm your host, Terrell Key, and I'm back, man, with another episode. And today I want to talk all about affirmative action, man. There's a landmark case that's about to come out. And I want to talk about it, man. So what do we talk about on this channel, man? We talk about all the most interesting aspects of education. And the Supreme Court deciding whether or not universities are going to be able to allow affirmative action at all across the United States, man. They're about to vote on this next month, man. Like, and what like the time is running down, right? So like there's case examples of what happened in California. Like there's all of these different things that are going on right now with affirmative action. I just thought that right now would be a really interesting time to really take a deep dive and look at affirmative action specifically in universities. So not like looking at employment and stuff like that, but specifically in universities. How has this thing worked, right? Has it worked out? Like, what are some of the benefits? What are some of the issues that we're having with affirmative action? How did this stuff even come out? Like, how did we decide to do affirmative action? I kind of want to touch base on all of those things and really give a really good and hopefully thorough breakdown of everything so that we can kind of have like, you know, a baseline for whether or not we think this is a good idea or not, right? So I'm going to, oops. Let me turn myself down on here because I also want to take a look at the poll and stuff like that to see how, like, what y'all think, man, you know, in the audience or whatever, because I got that poll drop. So I want to see what y'all think too. But let's kind of go through like some of the stuff. So one of the things that I do want to talk about, let me man, I'm struggle streaming today already, man. Like, hold on, let me get this live because I want to see the poll, man. It's my first time doing a poll, so just wanted to do something different, you know. Do something different, see another way of interacting with you. So right now, 100% people say that affirmative action works. But anyway, so I want to talk to y'all, just give a really good and thorough breakdown of all of this, like what's going on with affirmative action specifically in regards to how it's working in universities. One of the things that kind of helped bring me to this, sometimes, I'm not going to lie to you, sometimes I don't even really know exactly what what's like on my mind, like, you know, but like, what should I even talk about before like the day of? So today was one of, it was so many different topics that were running through my mind. Like, is there really Black privilege in education? Like all these different things, right? So it was a lot of like ideas, right? But I think today, man, I think it's really important to look at affirmative action in universities because that's a lot, man. Like when we're talking about college admissions scandals, like whether or not like there's reverse racism. There's just so much to talk about. There's an article that really came out just recently, actually dropped today, and it was really good. And they were really looking at the University of Virginia, and the University of Virginia, like, look, man, like whether the Supreme Court says that it's illegal or not, we're still gonna do it. We're still going to do it. And a lot of times, like what people are talking about, like when talking about like universities doing affirmative action and stuff, Virginia was like, look, man, like whether y'all decide this or not, I want to let y'all know, man, like these Black students are actually being retained from year 1 to year 2 at a 96% rate. So like they have an extremely high rate of retention at our school. So we're going to do this. We're going to break the law anyway. So I thought that was really interesting that a university would just publicly outright tell the Supreme Court and like all of these conservative judges, like, we don't matter what y'all say, we're going to do this no matter what, man. So I thought that was really, really interesting. There's two major landmark cases coming up in regards to affirmative action in higher ed. Major cases, man, major cases, stacked conservative justices, right? Like I think the majority of the justices right now are conservative, you know, after the Trump tenure like in office and stuff like that. So it's really going to be interesting, man. Also, I want to take a look at some of these universities. So like when we're talking about like the benefits like of affirmative action and then like the consequences of affirmative action, like when we're looking at these, like I want to look at the real numbers too. So like I don't want to just like go off of like hypotheticals and stuff like that. Let's look at the real numbers and let's see who are really impacting, like who are the real students that are involved in this entire process, right? So like, you know, it's interesting. This is really, really interesting. I'm not even lying to you, man. Like I didn't even know how affirmative action was created, like how it actually kind of all shook out. But I thought like that context was really important for having this discussion, right? So affirmative action, like first off, what is it, right? What is affirmative action exactly? So like a lot of people think that affirmative action is having like these quotas, right? Where you have X amount of black seats, X amount of Hispanic seats, like at a school. And we're talking specifically about schools, right? So, I mean, of course, like employment and stuff comes in, but a lot of people think that it's these quotas and stuff like that. But really today, like what affirmative action in schools looks like is basically having the ability to consider race in any way, like, you know, like if it's like an identifiable benefit in actually doing so, right? So how did it even come out, right? So why did they even decide to do it? So John Kennedy, man, this actually goes back to John Kennedy. John Kennedy in 1961, right? He passed an executive order, and he was like, man, just looking at like the history of like employment and race and opportunities, and even like specifically in schools, like the opportunities, man. You got going back to Brown v. Board, and like all of these people not being admitted into these universities. Like you have like these systems where people are kind of locked out of being able to get into the schools. So what John Kennedy said, like these are actually affirmative action is actually like that's his word, right? So he's saying that we need to take like if an institution is taking or receiving federal funds, then they need to take affirmative action. So taking positive steps towards opening the doors to everybody, right? Because they believe that where we kind of stood was a violation of the 14th Amendment. You're going to hear the 14th Amendment a couple times, right? So what they're talking about, the equal protections clause, making sure that every United States citizen has equal protections under the law. So the 14th Amendment actually goes all the way back to 1800. And like, that's actually what abolished slavery, right? Part of what abolished slavery. But we know like that there are systems that have happened after you know, like 1800, 18, and you know, in the 1900s, late 1800s, and all kinds of stuff that happened later after the 14th Amendment was passed, that, you know, that have stopped, you know, people from having equal protection. So you had like the separate but equal. You had all these different things that happened, man. Jim Crow. You have these lynchings. You had redlining. You had segregation. You had all this stuff that happened, you know, right after slavery ended, right? So like there was never really equal protections. So people ended up going back, you know, and saying like, yo, man, like, you know, like people fought for years, like civil rights and stuff like that, to get these equal protection. So after Kennedy, right? So Kennedy passed it in 61. Lyndon B. Johnson came back and made it even stronger, right? So like before, like Kennedy was just saying you need to take steps towards making things better, right? Lyndon B. Johnson was like, nah, man, like you can't even discriminate based on race, gender, like, you know, color, religion, sex, national origin. You can't discriminate at all. So he kind of put these national, like these anti-discrimination, discriminatory policies within, like, you know, like what is considered to be affirmative action, right? But since then, like since, you know, like the 60s or whatever, and keep in mind, like things were a little bit more at the forefront in the 60s, but in the early 2000s, justices like Sandra Day O'Connor, like they was thinking like, man, like what's the point? Like, why do we need to do affirmative action today? Like, what are the laws that are restricting people from being able to get good jobs and employment and get into schools? Like, what laws are there to restrict that? So what Justice Sandra Day O'Connor said is we expect that 25 years from now, the use of racial preferences will no longer be necessary to further, you know, like to further the interests approved today, right? And then you have people today, man, justices today, like Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, saying that she believes that we're going to literally throw out, like we're going to hurt the equal protections clause in the 14th Amendment. And like literally everybody on both sides of this argument. So you have white students saying that their equal protections are being violated, right? You have Asian students saying that their equal protections are being violated. Then you say, then you have black students on the other hand saying that their equal protections will be violated. So this is, I mean, it is a lot is going on. But first, before I kind of get into like more stuff, I wanted to just like a second to slow down and thank everybody that's here today, man. Like thank everybody, thank Rogue 4. Thank everybody here, man. I see I got a few people here or whatever. And I just want to thank y'all for being here, man. And if y'all haven't already, you know, please vote. If you haven't, hit that like button. It's free. Hit that like button for me. And it kind of helps get the word out about what we have going on. Let me get a quick drink of water. I'm parched, man. Hold on. That intro, I said a lot real fast. So I'm going to break it down a little bit slower. Break it down. So first off, like a lot of people, like when we're talking about these universities, right? And we're talking about spots, because this is what we're talking. We're not talking about jobs today. We're literally talking about university spots, right? We're talking about a spot into Harvard, a spot in the Yale, a spot in the Texas Austin, right? University UT Austin, a spot in the UCLA. A lot of people believe that that there's these spots or whatever, and they're unfairly being targeted, and they don't have an opportunity to get into these schools. But what they don't realize is that's illegal. So schools actually cannot do that, man. And that was ruled against in 1978. It said that it was a violation of the, guess what? The 14th Amendment, right? The 14th Amendment is the common thread here, right? And it's crazy, like how school and law sometimes kind of intertwine, right, man? Like sometimes we kind of find like that mark where like we're kind of together, right? So the 14th Amendment, right? It was a violation of that 14th Amendment, so you can't do that, right? And the court, like the Supreme Court, has ruled like, all right, so that's illegal. But if there's something that's extremely beneficial to like your university, then you can take a look at race as like a factor, like as a holistic approach. So like that has been like, and the word that they use is a compelling interest. So what that's been like for most schools today, it's been diversity, right? Like having diversity on campus, opening doors and things like that. But other people are saying that this is discriminatory to even look at race, not to give a spot to somebody because of race, but to consider it in any way, shape, or form is wrong, is what they're saying, right? They're saying that it's reverse racism and things like that, right? And college admissions advisors right now, they're just saying, man, like we're just taking a holistic approach. We're looking at everything. We're looking at your transcripts, academic records, letters of recommendation, socioeconomic status, whether or not you're first gen, or you like did you have a parent that went to their school or whatever? All these different things, extracurricular activities. They're looking at everything, man. So many, I'm telling you, so many times, like as a school counselor, because I'm a former school counselor, was a school counselor for 10 years. So many times they they tell you, man, like in these admissions offices, like, hey, like we're not just looking at GPA and test scores, we're taking a holistic approach. And a lot of times, like, like for like, I don't know, like for smaller state schools, like it's kind of like it was like cutthroat, like just numbers, right? Like if you got a 2.5 and an 18, you're in, or whatever, right? But like when you get to like some of these more prestigious schools and stuff like that, like these Ivies like Harvard or MIT or Yale, and that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about these more selective schools. They're all saying the same thing. Like there's no magic test score. We take this holistic approach in towards admissions, right? We're not just selecting people just based off of a test score. We believe kids are more than a test score. So yeah, so like that, like it's interesting, like how people kind of look at this, right? Like the admissions offices, they have their way of looking at college admissions. They think that they're just taking a holistic approach, and just race is just one of those variety of different factors, right? So you got, like I said, GPA, test scores, race, first gen, socioeconomic status, region, like where did you come from? Or are you from a rural area? All of those different things, like just a holistic approach to look at what the child is, who the child is, right? But so many people feel like that they're losing opportunities based on this holistic approach, and they feel like it should just be flat out merit and merit only in determining whether or not a kid should be admitted into the school, which is interesting. Like, what do y'all think out there, man? Let me know in the chat. Like, what do y'all think about this? Do you think it should be just merit? Do you think that diversity should be considered? Let me know what y'all think. Let me take a look at this poll and see how that's going. So let's see. We're gonna go up here. Let's see. Hit refresh. I mean, like this poll, like the poll for me, like on where I'm seeing it, it's like all the way at the top. So it's difficult to see. So all right, so we got a couple votes in. Everybody says that affirmative action works so far. Okay. So yeah, so but all right, so look here, this is why they decided to do affirmative action in school. So why do we do this, right? So like you got people on both sides that are adamant about their protections and their rights. And some people believe that it's a quota system and that's why they're not getting in. It's crazy, right? So one of the main reasons why like they decided to do affirmative action in schools was to increase diversity, right? There's so much like data on like how having underrepresented groups at the table can impact like the school climate, the culture, could help eliminate blind spots. Allowing like one of like a lot of parts of college is social too. Like so, like some of the social aspects of college, having a wider range of perspectives and ideas is important. Important, right? Man, mouth is dry today. So like that's like the main driver in it, right? UCLA, like they found it when they removed affirmative action, like their minority population dropped, like their freshman enrollment rate dropped significantly. Significantly fell by in medical schools, it fell by more than 1/3. And why did they get rid of affirmative action in UCLA? California banned it. So like in 1996, California decided that it's illegal. You cannot do affirmative action. You cannot consider race in any way. So it had a major impact on how many kids were going to the school. So I want to show y'all a quick slide real quick. Let me show y'all this. Show y'all just so you can kind of see how much it dropped. So, okay. So in 1996, 5%, like, so I had to go to like NPR, right, to find this because it's like old information. But so African Americans in UCLA. So 1996, this is when the ban kind of took effect, right? So they had 5.1% of their admissions class, right? People admitted 5.1% of them were African American, right? So 1998, 2 years after the ban, drops all the way down to 3%. Then it hovers at 3.1, 3.4, and then boom, 2.3, 2.0. So UCLA had to do some work. Here's UC Berkeley. So this is right after they did that. Hold on. So 1996. So these are prestigious schools, right? So roughly 6 or 7% of kids get into these schools. So UC Berkeley, income and admissions class, right? So you got 7.1%, all the way down to 3%. So it dropped by more than 50% immediately after. And like these schools are trying, everything that they can to maintain these numbers, right? So here's Cal. So it goes from 4.1 in 1996, and then it just drops down, right? It didn't drop as much. Let's see, admissions for minorities, other minorities, right? So just minorities in general. So 1996, 19%, 17%, and they kind of hovered around the same, right? So that's kind of how, like, what happened. So like a lot of people ended up not being admitted into the school. So that, like that was one of the problems that they were seeing, right? And they wanted to do something to increase this diversity. One of the other areas that they saw, so the high school graduating class in California is 52% Hispanic. But like when you look at the University of California system, like the UC system, only 29% of their incoming class is Hispanic. So like there's a huge drop off between, like the graduating seniors and exactly like who's getting admitted into the schools in the state, right? And we're talking about a state school. So like in Missouri, that would be like the equivalent of University of Missouri. In Georgia, University of Georgia, right? So like that's kind of what you're seeing. Like you're seeing a disparity in graduating class, like the percentage of the graduating class versus exactly who's getting inside of the school, right? So it changed the makeup of the incoming freshman class. Additionally, man, it's changed the amount of professors that they have from different minority backgrounds. So white instructors make up 70% of all academics for the University of California for all of their different schools. 70%. Let me know if I'm freezing up. It looks like one bar or something. Like I got one bar going on right now. Maybe I need to close some of these. Let me see if that helps. Cause I got all these tabs open or whatever. So let me see if I close some of these. Did that help? Let me know if y'all can't hear me or whatever. Just let me know if y'all can't. Let me know in the chat. But yeah, so looking at the staff, right? So like the staff was 70% white, and 27% of the incoming freshman class were white. So like you got 70% staff, but 27%, actually 27% of the students are white, 70% of the staff is white. So there's a disparity between the students and the staff. So they University of California, like they've been trying things, right? So what are they trying to mitigate like this problem, right? So what they're doing is they're looking at different high schools, right? So they're looking at these high schools, and if the high school is underrepresented in like the University of California system, then and you're in the top 10%, they're giving you an automatic admission. So like that's what they're trying to do, but the pace of that has not been able to keep up with what they're doing, like with getting rid of affirmative action. So like that's an issue. There's a major issue. Let me know if y'all can't hear me because I'm definitely worried about that right now. Let me know if y'all can't hear me in the chat, because that would be crazy. But yeah, so I don't know, man. Like that's interesting. Another thing, they were looking at disparities in education, right? When they came up with affirmative action, right? So increasing the diversity in higher education and access. Like they want to make sure that people have the ability to access. Okay, cool, perfect. Yeah, want to make sure people have the ability to access higher education. Just thinking about like what it can do for you, man, like having the opportunity to go to these schools, right? So like if you don't have the ability to access your state school, like what are your outcomes in life if you can't get inside of the state school? I'm guessing some people might say that you could go to community college, but you look at the completion rates for community college and they're not that high. So like that access is very, very important. Another thing, increasing the diversity in higher ed can do is help you out if you're alone, man. I remember sometimes at Mizzou, man, like being the only Black person in class and how that might feel, and feeling like the pressure to have all of the answers for all Black people. Or if I wasn't smart enough, or if I wasn't capable enough, like, am I a negative representation of what Black students are, like, at the university just because I'm the only one there? So being like conscious of that, but having other people there and having other people to kind of be a sounding board, is very, very important. Very important. Career opportunities. Like what type of career opportunities can you be provided if you can get into like a major state school? Like when you're trying to become like a lawyer, like a lot of times they'll look at what school you went to, or like as an engineer, like what school, if you go to Cal Berkeley or you go to Stanford or you go to some of these schools, man, like it could alter the trajectory of your life. So and that works both ways. Like, so for the people feeling like they're getting left out, they're going to feel like they're losing major life opportunities, but also like the people that are getting included, their lives are being changed, like by having this opportunity to get into these schools. It's important, right? Trying to make sure that I pace myself a little bit, man. Let me know if y'all have any questions or anything too, man. Like it's a little silent today in the chat, but just let me know if y'all have any questions or whatever. I don't want to blow through things, and sometimes I talk kind of fast. Especially like I've been told by my friends that are from the South, man. Like sometimes I could go a little too fast, man. So I want to make sure that I'm taking my time. Another thing that's important. There's some water here. Hold on. It's giving kids the opportunity to have a role model or a mentor. I know like people at Mizzou, like Clarence Wine, like they were very important to me. Just being able to see someone that looks like me as a staff member, like like that was very important. I came from a 99% Black school. So having somebody from my culture, from a similar background that I could actually talk to at the university was very, very important. Clarence Wine, Jimmy Langley, those were very important people to me. Ended up being my fraternity brothers too. And I know like healthcare outcomes are also linked to college education. So like having like access to a quality education could lead to improved healthcare, like better insurance and all sorts of things. And I'm not saying that you have to go to college in order to get insurance, but I mean, like numerous studies said that college educated people have better insurance. So that's a legitimate thing. And then also people graduating from college benefits society as a whole. Having people integrated, I guess, within the college, a lot of people would say would be a net benefit because people are sharing and bouncing ideas off of each other, and it's a melting pot where people could collaborate. Social mobility is another big thing, man, that's important when it comes to like having the ability to climb the socioeconomic ladder, man. Like most people, when they like wherever they start out at, like, so say if you start off as poor, more likely you're going to end up poor. Like that's what statistics say. If you're middle class, more like, as a child, more likely you're going to be middle class as an adult. If you're upper class as an adult, more than likely you're going to be upper class. I mean, as a child, more than likely you're going to be upper class as an adult. Let's see. What is the main issue people take with affirmative action? But I don't know why, man. Like people feel like legacy. I don't know why they feel like legacy is okay. And legacy to me is another form of affirmative action. Like it's taking an affirmative step to make sure that you're taking care of the alumni of the school. So like, if you have two family members that graduated from, I don't know, Florida, like the school is going to take a look at that and think about like the rich history that your family has in Florida, right? Or if your grandparents graduated or whatever. So like that's an affirmative step to make sure that they're protected. So they get a little bit better treatment when it comes to admissions. Now, not at all schools, but at a lot of schools, like that's a major deal, especially at some of these more selective schools. That's a major deal. So sometimes athletics too, like when you look at UNC, UNC is very, very selective. I'm gonna show y'all in a second just how selective UNC is. And UNC, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, comes up over and over again. That's cited in this most recent lawsuit that's going to the Supreme Court. We already kind of talked about employment. Like you go to some of these good schools, man, like you're gonna get employed. You graduated at the top of your law class for some of these more prestigious schools, you're gonna get hired at a really nice firm. So like some of this stuff is very important. Some of the best superintendents that I know, these great superintendents, especially like black superintendents or whatever, a lot of them graduated from like Harvard and stuff like that. They have these really rich backgrounds from these prestigious schools. So I mean, like it can be literally life altering having that opportunity to do that. Even at the high school level, I know people that were given the opportunity to go to some of the more prestigious schools in high school due to affirmative action and stuff like that, and they were able, to do pretty well for themselves because of the more rigorous work that they did in high school. Like they were able to hack it. So another thing, man, like diversity in leadership. Like if you want diverse leadership around the country, like your leaders are coming from these major universities. Some people come from like the Morehouses and the Howards and stuff like that. But that's a big deal. Let's see, some families have histories going back to 100 years when black. Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's true. That's definitely a fact. Some people. I was gonna in fact, I'm gonna pull up this timeline real quick because I want people to kind of see, like, because Texas is one of the major. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of show this real quick because Texas is one of the main states too that has been named in some of this stuff too. So here we go. Let me do share. Let's do this timeline. So like, yeah, so the first attempt to integrate Texas was in what, 1885. Yep, but the school denied him from admissions based on race, right? So when you go back 100 years, like people were trying a second attempt. The second attempt. So keep in mind, all right, so the first attempt was in 1885. The second attempt to get into Texas by a black person wasn't until 1939. So how many years is that, Rogue, for? From 1885 all the way to 1939. That was the second attempt. Let's see. And when he arrived on the first, let's see, registered to attend business psychology and a salesman class. When he arrived on the first day of class, he stunned the students and administrators. No such defiance or challenge to the unwritten yet enacted regulations of racial discrimination had ever taken place. But that's crazy. So I don't even think he had permission to go there based on his race. He just kind of he applied and kind of just got in based on merit. And then they found out that he was black. So 54 years before somebody even attempted again. So like when you're looking at this timeline of events, man, like people weren't really starting to get in until well after. So like you got, like first Texas graduate, let's see. Wow, man. Oh, wait. Oh, no. She didn't even graduate from the University of Texas. Oh, so she was going to get congratulated for being a nationally recognized African-American pianist, but she refused to perform before a segregated audience in the gym. So she refused to even perform. Let's see. So, yeah, so 1950. Plus the case was in. Yeah, so that's crazy. Yeah, not until like 1950 did anyone even get in. So, you're talking about 100 years, like after the first attempt, before somebody even got into the university. Like, that's kind of what you're looking at, like when you're talking about some of these policies, you know what I mean? So, and then some of these people have been able to get in for years and years and years, man, and build these rich histories when other people have not. Like, they haven't even had the opportunity to become legacy, yet. Like, there's so many people that are still first gen. And when you look at, when I go back to the timeline, you'll see why. like a lot of times, like people think of first gen as just, like you didn't, like, oh, well, I can't blame me because your parent didn't do the right thing or whatever. But when you look at what first gen really means, like when it comes to like people actually having access, like legitimate access to the universities, I mean, it's not really that much time. You know what I mean? Kind of talked about breaking the cycle of poverty. Like one of the quickest like ways out of poverty is having an education. Like, so I mean, like when you're talking about like this poverty, man, like it's going throughout like some of these communities, and not just Black communities, but like Native American communities, some of these Hispanic communities and stuff like that. Like, like not having access to that university at the appropriate level could cause problems. It could cause major issues when it comes to perpetuation of poverty. um oh, a big one, a big thing, man, like networking and opportunities, man, like having friends that graduated from college. Just thinking about like the opportunities that my son has that we didn't have, coming up, because he has access to lawyers, he has access to realtors, to mortgage brokers, to doctors. He has access to all of these different people, just because of our, like our background in Mizzou. Like, so like Black professionals are just all around him. So like he even talks and acts like a Black professional early on because that's what he's around. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't know anything different. Like, so I mean that's a major benefit of going to like some of these schools or whatever. Like just having that access to Black professionals, man, and the networking. So I mean, and then like I mean, even like looking out for like some of your blind spots, and too, I think that's another benefit to affirmative action too. Like I know there's this story about like this hand dryer, right? And like they were creating like this hand dryer, and when Black people came in like to dry their hands, the sensor couldn't read their hands, but because like nobody was there, like that was Black or whatever, like, or darker skin, they were not able, like they didn't see that there was a blind spot, like, so it was usable for certain groups of people. So I just remember that story. So like just so many times, like in leadership, when you're trying to design policies that work best for everyone, like not having people there at the table, man, having those blind spots like that could be a major problem. What's going on, King Lemuel, man? I shout out to you, man. Just breaking down like affirmative action, man. We got a landmark case coming up in the Supreme Court. Like it's going to determine whether or not schools are going to be able to use race in any way, like when determining whether or not a student's admitted. I wonder what do you think? I put a poll up top, King Lemuel, so I wonder what you think too. Do you think affirmative action works? We got the poll, man. The polls it's dipping. Some people don't think it works, man. We got it down to 60% now. So let me know what y'all think, man. The polls dipping down. And I'm gonna go over the negatives too, man. So I'm gonna be unbiased, what I'm saying? I heard about that for HBCUs. But HBCUs have kind of always opened their doors to people that were not Black, you know what I mean? So, but for like some of these white universities, I'm not saying that they're necessarily discriminating based on race today, but what they're talking about is whether or not you could look at race in any way, shape, or form. So like a lot of people think of affirmative action. Let's see if you have a Black school. No, I'll break that down too for you. But so like what affirmative action is, so like in 1961, Kennedy, he was like, like, hey, look, man, like we have all these historical, like barriers, right, to just employment, university, admission, all of this different stuff because of these historic barriers. Like I was showing over, hold on, wait, where'd it go? No, that's too small. Like over here, like we were kind of looking at some of these barriers or whatever, right? Just like how long it took for people to be admitted into some of these schools, right? Just looking at the timeline, going all the way back to, let's see, all the way back to 1885. And like, like something like the journey that it took for people to be able to get into school. So John Kennedy said that we need to take some affirmative action in order to make sure that we could eliminate, let's see, what is this? Mr. CKB said it doesn't work. That's interesting, man. The link is dropped to Mr. CKB because I'm interested in hearing like your legal perspective on this too, because he's in law school, so I'll be interested in hearing that. But yeah, so I dropped the link, and I'll drop it again because I'll be interested in hearing that too. So let me copy this and I'll put it in the chat. But yeah, so but so like that's some of the issues or some of the positives, right? Like of uh of affirmative action that I kind of been going through. But let me see. Oh wait, I'm sorry, I forgot your question too. I'm tripping. Let me a question. So affirmative action, so that's basically what it is. Like today, you can't have quotas and stuff like that. Like it's illegal to have quotas. You cannot have quotas in any way. But you can consider race if it's like a compelling reason for you to do so. How can you? Oh man, I decided to do this one today, man, and I thought about it when I was doing. I was like, dang man, this would have been a good one. But like I just today, I was like, man, I read this case or whatever, read about Virginia, and Virginia saying that they don't care what the Supreme Court says, they're gonna do what they want. They like we don't do what we want. So that's just really interesting to me, man. Another component, man, like I see like at work and probably happens at schools because I want to kind of run through these benefits and then I'll break down the negatives. But HBCUs, that's not really affirmative action. HBCUs were created because man, dang man, I'm going all over the place. But HBCUs were created because like look here, let me show you this tab. Like black people weren't able to go to these schools, man. So like 1885, man, this is Texas, they couldn't get in. They tried again, 1939, man. Dude gets in, but they didn't realize he's black, man. You got to get up out of here. And then, like, like she couldn't even really perform, man. Like the audience was even segregated, so she refused to perform. 1950, man, like you get four, like maybe I think it was like four black people in the school, right after Plessy versus Ferguson. So you got four people there, right? And just think about what that would be like when you're not necessarily wanted, at the school. 1950, right? So we're getting close to 100 years later. So like the HBCUs were created to give black people the opportunity to actually advance and gain the education. This camera tripping. There you go. But yeah, so like that's kind of what the HBCUs are. So that's sort of the difference there. Thinking about like another benefit, because I'm gonna go to the negatives too, man. But I want to make sure that I carefully lay out the benefits. Fostering understanding, right? Like people understanding each other. I think about like some of the conversations that we have at work, man. We have some pretty tough conversations at the job, like amongst our team, like just like our different experiences and getting to know each other in that way and getting to understand each other, man. Like that's one of the benefits afforded of having cultural diversity within like a school system. Like that's a way that that people can kind of move forward or whatever. So I don't know. And then challenging like some of the narratives, like when you have like homogeneity, like when it's all like everybody's from the same background, and when you have groupthink and stuff like that could be, overall a problem. You know what I mean? So that's some of the positives. But there are a lot of people that don't like affirmative action, man. A lot of people that don't like it. Let's see. So when you say does it work, I'm wondering to what extent do you mean? Has it? All right. So when I say does it work, has it increased diversity within jobs? Like, is it functional? Like, is it something that's functioning? Has it improved? Like, because I'm specifically talking about schools in this situation because that's what's going up to the Supreme Court. But like, has it improved like the culture like on campuses in the United States? Is it a net improvement? Is it a net negative? Like, what do y'all think there? Like, that's what I mean by is it a positive or is it a negative? Like, did it work? Like, did it work for universities in particular? So, like, has it worked at the job? We're not really talking about jobs or whatever, education channel, right? But like at the school level, do you believe that it worked? Did it help? Did it help people out? Like, did it work? Or was it negative? Like, did it harm so many people that it wasn't a net negative? Was it a net negative? I think that's an interesting question. Kind of limited on like the space that I could kind of lay everything out, but I just wanted to kind of see what people felt about that. And Mr. CKB, let me know what you think, man. Like, was it a net negative, net positive? But man, when you poll people about affirmative action, according to Pew Research, 74% of people in 2022, 74% of people said they didn't agree with it. 74% of people said that they did not fully agree with it. Let's see. It doesn't work because of its discriminatory undertones, which is the exact reason for affirmative action was created. That's what a lot of people would say. I got a different take that I'm gonna tell you later. I got a slightly different take that you might not expect than what on this, right? On the entire thing on both sides. King Lemmy, I'm not fully versed on this. I lean closer to maybe it worked for making diverse spaces. Mr. CKB says it's self-contradictory to exclude someone. So like what Mr. CKB is probably thinking is that that this is an exclusionary policy. Like so, like there's a certain quota. Like, hey, like you don't fit this box because you're black, and I need X amount of black people probably in this seat or whatever, like in order to do something, right? But you know, like, that's actually illegal. That was made illegal in 1978. Let's see. Does that mean that 74% of people believe blacks can achieve the same outcomes without the hand up? I don't know if that's true, but they said that affirmative action, they don't believe that that race should be considered at all. At all. They said that it shouldn't be a consideration at all. What universities are doing, and I'm talking specifically about universities, is they're looking at everything like that makes up the child, right? So they're looking at whether or not your parents graduated from college. So they're looking at your test scores. They're looking at your GPA. They're looking at what community you coming from. They're looking at what high school you coming from. They're looking at whether or not you took the most challenging courses. And we're talking about prestigious schools in particular. So some of the state schools that are not very prestigious or not very selective, they're not going to have this holistic approach that they tell school counselors about all the time. So like when we're talking about Harvard, we're talking about Yale, like when we go to these articulations where like they basically tell us what it takes to get admitted to their school, they're not just looking at your test score. They, you know, like a lot of people say, well, you got to have a 35 to get in. That might be true. That might not be true because they're going to look at the entire student when it comes to admissions. Race is one of those factors, but it's not the determining factor whether or not you get in or not, according to them, right? So it's one of many factors that they look at. So the argument here in front of the Supreme Court is whether that should be allowed at all, if race should not be a factor. So, and there's evidence of like what has happened in the past, because you look at in 1996, California eliminated, they made it illegal for schools to consider race in any way. And then we saw a significant drop in enrollment from like some of these, you know, and when it comes to in regards to Black and Native American and Hispanic students, like there was a drop off in that regard. So that's one of the so in turn, like what they ended up doing since they banned that in 1996 is they looked at high schools that were underrepresented at their universities, and that's how they tried to kind of combat that, to kind of increase diversity back in their schools. So like if your high school hasn't been let in, then that's what well, I don't believe it is entirely necessary. Why do you believe it's necessary? I think that's interesting. You don't believe affirmative action works, but it's necessary. So I'm telling you, like, I think my take is going to be completely different. It's going to be completely different. I think, and I think like that's one of the fun parts about having a channel. Like, you have like the traditional views or whatever of everything, and then like you have a different take. And I think my take is slightly different. Let's see. I would add, considering the gross advantage whites have over blacks and other minorities in the name of discrimination, this discriminatory doctrine was just, and so that's what, see, and that's the thing. Like, I don't necessarily know if it's discriminatory in the way that a lot of, and we're going to look at some of these universities, Mr. CKB, and we're going to look at the real numbers at the universities. And I want you to tell me whether or not you believe that, that it's discriminatory, right? Like we're gonna look at the real numbers, right, in just a second, right? So I'm telling you, I had a completely different take. All right, so let's see. Other people, like so outside of people just being against it, right? Like oh man, I forgot a story. Let me tell a story, right? So man, I keep me forgetting to tell these stories. So man, while back, man, long time ago, back when I was a brand new school counselor, man, like we had a student, and this was exceptional, right? And, it was exceptional. He was a white male student. And I remember, man, and like this is one of the things, like the consequences of affirmative action too. Just thinking about it in general. But we had the student, he was exceptional, and he applied to like the school that was very selective, right? Like this particular part of the university of school. And even with his exceptional scores, he was denied. They gave him deferred admission, like into the school or whatever. And immediately I remember people thinking, it was because of affirmative action, and they were believing that maybe it was the black students taking these spots. But when you look at like who's actually in that particular school, like it just doesn't really bear out. Don't want to get too specific because I don't want people to know exactly who I'm talking about, the people that work with me and stuff like that. But like that's one of the examples. Like people immediately went to race, and like that's one of the consequences of it. There's also this Harvard case that's coming up too. And when they're talking about like in that Harvard and UNC are both coming up in front of the Supreme Court, and like one of the people said, we have anti-discrimination laws and the 14th Amendment, and then being used to say, well, this is discrimination towards whites, and then in the Harvard case towards Asian Americans. So like people are saying, let's see, my position predates Brown versus Board of Education. Yeah, for sure. I totally get what you're saying. Like before Brown v. Board, like when you're looking at the historical approach, man, like a lot of people have been locked out. And then when you look at these legacy admissions too, man, like that's another way, in my opinion, of doing affirmative action by another name. So I don't know, man. Like, but a lot of people are arguing, and especially this girl, Abigail Fisher. I'm gonna show this video. I wonder, man, I hope you two don't trip with me. It's a short video. I'm gonna show this video, and this is about and tell me what you think, Mr. CKB, with your legal background. Let me know if y'all can see this. Oh wait, hold on, wait.
What role, if any, should a college
Can y'all see this?
applicant's race play in a public university's decision?
Can y'all see and hear this?
Or reject the applicant. In 2013, the United States Supreme Court
addressed this issue in Fisher versus University of Texas. Abigail Fisher, a white high school student in Texas, applied for admission into the University of Texas at Austin, which admitted only a fraction of its applicants. The university had a two-tiered admission policy. Under the first tier,
pay attention to this.
75% of admitted students, any high school senior in Texas who ranked high in his or her class, typically in the top 7th or 8%, automatically would be admitted into the university if they applied. Under the second tier, for the remaining quarter of admitted students, the university took a holistic approach to assessing students and assigned the students both an academic index and a personal achievement index. That dual approach considered not only academic achievement, but also applicants' essays and a wide variety of personal achievements and circumstances. The latter included leadership activities, work experiences, coming from a low-income
let me pause this.
and an applicant.
This ended up being a major case. So look out of all of these different things that they're talking about, academic achievement. So this is second tier, right? This is going to become a major case that's going to kickstart some of these Supreme Court cases today. So they're looking at academic achievement, right? They're looking at your essay, right? And a lot of these essays, like, so they have like a personal statement, and then they might have like supplementary essays. Like, I don't know, I mean, some of them are wild, right? Like, like, what do you, like, and sometimes it's to get admitted into like the engineering school or the journalism school, right? So like they might have additional supplemental essays, right? Like in order to get in, right? The people that were in the top tier, automatic admission. Now, below that, you have personal achievement and circumstances. So you're looking at the leadership activities, the work experiences, whether or not you're from a low-income background, and race was one of those things. But because it was one of those things, guess what people focused on?
The university designed the second tier based on the Supreme Court's decisions in Grutter versus Bollinger and Gratz versus Bollinger. The expressed goal of the university's admission policy, including its second tier, was to increase the diversity of its student body. Fisher, who applied for admission under the university's second-tier process, was denied admission. She filed a federal lawsuit contending that the university's second-tier admissions process violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment based on its consideration of an applicant's race. The district court upheld the university's policy as constitutional. On Fisher's appeal, the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit affirmed the district court's judgment. Although the appeals court stated that it was engaging in strict scrutiny of the university's admissions policy, the court afforded deference both to the university's decision to consider diversity as a basis for its race-based policy and the university's specific manner of considering an applicant's race. Fisher successfully petitioned the United States Supreme Court to review her case.
So yeah, so that's where we're at now. And now there are multiple cases going before the Supreme Court, like that are saying, even if you consider race at all, not just as one piece of the puzzle, like not, like one piece of who you are. If you consider it in any way, shape, or form, then you're violating the Equal Protections Clause, man. Mr. CKB, man, you're the lawyer, man. What do you think? I wish I had the ability to come up. I'm actually about to. Oh, you're about to board a flight. Yeah, I wonder what you think. You know what I mean? Because like when you look at Texas's emissions, like when you look at who's at Texas, right? So like we're talking about this. Like we look at Texas's emission and we look at who's actually there. The analysis should start at Missouri. Yeah, tell me more about that. I don't know more about that. Not these recent cases. Got you. But if you look at Texas, right? And we're talking about like the discrimination, American Indians, right? Like we have, or Alaska Natives, 0.1%. Asian students at University of Texas, Austin, 20.6%. Black students, 5.2%. Hispanic students, 24.2%. And then like you have, let's see, international, 9.1%. And then white students, 36.7%. So I mean, like, is it really increasing like diversity? Yep, cool. Have a safe flight, Mr. CKB. But yeah, like, is it really? Yep, cool. Yep. When it's like, is it really increasing the diversity like that? Like, that's my question. Did it really do what it was designed to do? Did it really have that type of an impact when you look at the real numbers for University of Texas? And then when you compare those numbers to like the state of Texas, like when you look at the Census Bureau data, does that mirror like what you're seeing in the state? So like you have 77% white. So, but when you go to Texas, it's like the UT Austin, like which is the flagship school of the state, it's only 36% white, 13% black on like the census, right? But only, what was it? It was what, 5% black there. And then when you look at you look at the Asian population in Texas, it's 5.5%. But when you go over here, it is 20.6%. So like, is it really having this negative impact that people are saying, purporting that it might have? I'm not so sure. Let me look at big future. So let's take a look at some of these schools real quick. And let's just look and see if we're seeing exactly what they're saying. So here's Harvard, right? So we look at Harvard, you go to Campus Life from Big Future, and then you can look at the demographics of the students. Here we go. So black students, 9%, Asian students, 23%, Hispanic students, 12%, and then you got white students down here at 34%. Is it really having this negative impact? Like, are black students really taking all of these spots? You look at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, like they're named in these cases, right? And let's see. So here we go. We scroll down to the bottom. You look at the black student population, again, around 8%, Asian students, 14%, Hispanic students, 10%, and white students, 55%. Or the black students really taking away these seats, man? Like, like that's my question. My question here, like, do you think that these black students are really taking away seats at these universities like that? I'm not so sure that that's the truth. Let's see, University of Virginia, that was another one. So University, let's see, UVA, University of Virginia. I think, did I already do that one? Or did I do North Carolina? Let's see. Yeah, Virginia, 7% black, 18% Asian, 7% Hispanic, 53% white. Is that mirroring like the demographics of Virginia? Like, I don't really know, man. Like, because I'm not really seeing this high black population where like tons of black people are getting in, like, is that what we're seeing here? Like, or is there like some type of scapegoating happening on here? I don't know. Like, y'all tell me. I don't know. And because I really think that there's a bigger issue here that's not even tied to race at all. Like, the universities could literally fix this pretty simply. But what do we have today before I get to my ideas for what they can do, right? You got this perception of unfair advantages. Like, so like a lot of, like I said, at my school, like people were thinking that even like when some people get hired, like, in jobs, even though I'm not necessarily talking about jobs, like you have this perception that people were hired unfairly just because of their race or whatever, man. Like, that's one of those things, right? Like, so, like that's a real perception, a real issue real deal issue like the people are having. They wonder whether or not that, like if it's really a meritocracy, if it really matters if they work hard or if they would have just only been black, like with, because like a lot of times, like when you look at like some of these scholarships and stuff like that, so it's beyond getting in college. Like a lot of the scholarships are tied directly to merit, like, GPA, test score, scholarship, right? Like, so it's interesting. Or even if they did the holistic approach, man, like when you look at all of the factors that are being taken into account when we're talking about a holistic approach, you know what I mean? Like, is it really that, like, is it race the only thing or the most important aspect in selecting admissions? And if it is, then why are we not seeing higher percentages, even percentages that are mirroring like the population or more, if there was an unfair advantage for Native American, for Black students, for Hispanic students? If there was this unfair advantage, right, then why aren't we seeing disproportionality in their numbers and in their numbers being inflated? Some people believe that the schools are doing reverse discrimination, right? Like, so instead of doing discrimination, against, like Black people, Hispanic people, or whatever, like, or are they really doing reverse discrimination against white people and Asian people? Like, that's like been a popular thing, right? Also, like a lot of people have like the stereotype, like when they're in these universities, like maybe that they were just taken in, only because of their race, or, whatever. Like, so, that's interesting. I mean, I remember even when I started working, at a certain school or whatever, I remember people asking me like, who did I know or how did I get in? Because, their friend didn't get the job over me and stuff like that. So like people just automatically assumed something nefarious happened for me to be able to get the job. Like, not that my talent would be the reason why I got the job. Like, so, it's an interesting thing too. And then people are even questioning the need today. Do we have the need for affirmative action today? I mean, they're saying that, there's no laws in place or anything like this stopping you from being able to get into a university. So is there a real need in order to get into, into these universities? What is the need here, right? Then if you get there, like, are you going to become like the token, right? Like, are you going to become like the token Black person, like that, or are they going to put you into like some engineering program as the one embodiment of a seat, like representing Black people? Like, yeah, we have diversity because we got John, like, so we have diversity and stuff like that. So like that, like that's some of the stuff that comes with it. And there's tons of biases against it. A lot of people are believing that there's quotas or set asides, like where schools are setting these seats aside. Like I said, over and over again, that's not a thing. Also, oh man, like I also got a short video that I want to show y'all too with Thomas Sowell, because I know he came up recently in like pop culture. So I'm gonna show y'all him talking about affirmative action, and then I'm gonna finally give y'all my thoughts on affirmative action. All right, so here we go. We're gonna go right here.
Delivering telegrams.
Delivering telegrams.
We better say that because there will be a generation that won't know what Western Union was. But
yeah, that's true too.
Right.
And so I worked in the area of Manhattan called the Chelsea District, which is around 23rd Street, 9th Avenue. And at the end of the day, I had several ways of getting back home. The easiest and fastest way was with a subway, which was a nickel in those days. When I was feeling flush, I might go for a bus for a dime. And then when I was really getting reckless, I would take the Fifth Avenue bus, which was the elite of the buses. Was 15 cents. And so I would walk over to Fifth Avenue, take that bus. And it would take me up through all the...
Wait, hold on, wait. Wrong one, my bad, y'all. Here we go. My bad, y'all. I had y'all watching the wrong one. I was like, man, this don't even sound right. Hold on. Let's see. We're gonna do Thomas Sowell. That don't even seem like the right one. It must have been playing in the background and took him to another video. Hold on one second. I got it right here. Man, I'll be tripping sometimes. Hold on. Let's see. Here we go. I was like, man, that don't even sound like he talking about what I was talking about at the 2-minute mark. Hold on. Here we go. I got it right here. And here we go. My bad, y'all. Tripping. Let's see. Share screen. Here we go. And then it's at 2 minutes that he talks about it. Here we go. So I'm like, but like you talking about a bus and stuff like that. I'm like, what is he talking about? Here we go.
When you got to education in the United States, you talked about affirmative action, and you came up with some statistics, and I wanted to ask you about what I look for. Here it is. You said that at the University of California at Berkeley, for example, where the entering freshman class has been described as, quote, wonderfully diverse, unquote, because the, quote, class closely reflects the actual ethnic distribution of California high school students. These are your words. More than 70% of black students fail to graduate.
Yes.
Why?
Because they're mismatched with Berkeley. That is, these students, the average black student at Berkeley is above the national average on test scores. It's just that the average white student is further above the national average, and the average Asian student further above than the white students. And so in that atmosphere, these students who have every qualification to succeed are artificially turned into failures. And the only beneficiary of that is the University of California at Berkeley. Because what they've effectively done is rented these bodies for window dressing for a few years. And then when they're through with them, they're put aside, a new bunch of bodies.
So I hear what he's saying here. Like he's talking about like saying that these students, like even though they were above the national average, they might not admit Berkeley's criteria, right? In that case, that makes total sense. Like if you didn't meet the criteria, but like there's an inflated way of doing this, man. Like there's pressure, like from U.S. News and like all of these different ranking agencies. Like when it comes to colleges, there's pressure to keep the percentage of kids admitted low by having those lower admission standards. It's not even about like kids being able to perform the duties anymore. Like right now, like the race is to make sure that you're more prestigious, right? And the more prestigious you are, like the more you can charge, and like the higher you're ranked as far as schools. So, so what he's saying about like kids not being able to get to do the work might not necessarily even be true anymore.
Is it brought in?
You told them that?
Oh, yeah.
And what do they say to you?
Oh, different things. I remember one fellow saying, "Oh, Tom, I'm just a little guy. I can't do anything about this," which, wonderful. But the people who really have the influence are not the people I've talked with. Those people know exactly what they're doing. There's another group, I guess, that benefits from this. You have an establishment there, a Black Studies establishment, who needs students to be in their classrooms, and these students serve those purposes.
Right. So he's saying that these students that are getting in, they're not getting real majors, and they're basically like, if you're a Black Studies professor or whatever, like this is inflating your classroom. So that's kind of what he's getting at, and a lot of this saying that that Black students will be better served at going to institutions that they're more capable of performing at a high level, right? But that's not really even the issue anymore. Like I said, things are changing kind of in public education, and I think that this problem might actually work itself out. So these are my thoughts now, right? So like schools, universities in general are moving away, pushing back on these highly selective processes, like where like there's this pressure to not admit students. Even though a student might be capable of doing the work, they're not admitting students. So like where you might include a factor like race or whatever, say like both kids have, I don't know, like a 36 on the ACT, one kid's Black, they come from a poor household, one kid is middle class, white or whatever, like say they have the same scores or whatever, and then one doesn't get in based on like the other societal factors or whatever. That's what we're talking about. But what they could do is just let both of them in. Why can't you just let both of them in? Like if both of them are capable of doing the work, and that's what we really are. If both of them are capable of doing the work, why not just let both of them in? And the reason why is the pressure to keep that rate of admission down. Let me see if I could show y'all this. Like when we look at these schools, like it's all about that rate of students not actually getting into the school. Like that's very important to a lot of these schools. So here we go. Let me go to I don't know. Let's pick Harvard, right? Let's pick on Harvard. So we're picking on Harvard. We look at admissions. Only 4% of the kids applying are accepted. That doesn't mean that only 4% of the kids that applied are capable of doing the work. It just means that they're accepting 4 because it looks good. It looks good. You go to Yale. So why not just admit 6? Like, if you have 6% of kids able to do the work, Yale, 6% of kids getting in, right? Only 6%. And you look at the numbers of kids applying So like they had 50,000 applicants and they only admitted 2,000 applicants. Let's go back to Harvard. So 50,000, they admitted 2,000. Then we go to Harvard and we go admissions and we scroll down. Let's see where they also had 50,000. No, it's Yale. Oh no, wait, go back one more. Harvard. Here we go. So they had 61,000 and they only admitted 1984. Guess what? You could admit 2,000. You could admit 2,000 that meet the criteria. You go to UC Berkeley. I mean, it's a very easy solution. Like, do what's right for students instead of what's better for your perception. Very selective. 16% of kids admitted, right? They got 128,000 applicants and only admitted 14,000 out of 128,000. UCLA is a big one. And tell me, am I tripping? Like, why not just take the kids that are capable of doing the work? And then you don't have to worry about this. 12%, right? So 149,000 people applied. So just think, man, their application fee, where is it at? Application, admissions. Their application fee is high too. $70. So $70, and they had 150,000 people, almost 150,000 people apply at $70 a pop and only admitted 12,000. It just seems like it would just make more sense just to admit the kids that could actually do the work. Like, am I tripping? Like, why not just do this whole holistic approach and take the kids that are capable of doing the work? That way you have your diversity, you have your kids that could actually do the work. Kids are still getting access to a quality education. It's not just looking at standardized test scores, because a one-day test score can't really tell you whether or not a kid is going to be successful. I mean, you don't have to worry about the legal pressures or anything. Like, why not just do what's best for students? I don't know, man. Let me know. Am I making sense, y'all? Does it make any sense? Yeah, I mean, it's intentional, man. Like, they're intentionally deflating their number. I mean, inflating their numbers. Like, they're taking all of these applicants, but not admitting anyone. Like, you could just literally just make more seats. Simple as that. Boom. Take the people that can do the work. So even with Thomas Sowell, like if he's just saying like admitting people that can't do the work, no one's advocating for that. Take the kids that can do the work and just let them in. Like, because you can't tell me that only 4% of the people that applied out of the 61,000 could do Harvard's level of work. When some of these kids are going to other schools, they might not get admitted to Harvard, but they get into Yale, or they get into MIT. So it's just not true. So anyway, those are my thoughts, man. Like, I have been on for 1 hour and 7. I am tired, y'all. I thank everybody that came out tonight that supported me, man. Thank you so much. And hit that like button if you have not already. Subscribe to the channel. I'm gone, y'all. Which way is it? Peace.